let's go over time conversion problem. Given the time in 12-hour AM or PM format, converted to military hour time. If you're not familiar with what military time is, it's a 24-hour time, and let's say that you have 6 p.m. Right now it's 6 p.m. So if you were to convert this to 12-hour time, you would add 12, so that will be 18, right? And you drop the PM sign. So final result will be something like 18 ... and 00. Now there is an edge case that you have to pay attention to, and it's right here. Note midnight 12 a.m. on a 12-hour clock is this over here. So 12 a.m. is equal to 000000 on a 12-hour clock, and noon is the same except that you just get rid of the PM sign, and that's represented over here. So this is an edge case that you want to pay special attention to, especially the midnight. Now, function description. Complete the time conversion function in the editor below. It should return a string. So we're going to return a string representing the input type in 24-hour format. So whatever string that we get, we want to convert it to 24-hour format and then return that. Time conversion has following parameters. Takes in a string representing time in 12-hour format. Okay, so we convert 12-hour to 24. Now a single string containing a time in 12-hour clock format, i.e. for example this or this, so hours, minutes, seconds, AM or PM, where 1 is less than or equal to an hour, where hour is between 1 and 12, so less than or equal to 12, and minutes and seconds are represented by numbers between 00 and 59. So that means that we can't obviously have something like 60 minute here. 60 minute is essentially an hour, so you would round that up. And same goes for seconds too. This is just definition of how time works. So constraints, all input times are valid. Output format convert and print the given time in 24-hour format. Okay, we talked about this, where the hours are between 0 and 23. So you can't have something like 24 0000. This should be written as, and this is the edge case, midnight. Now we have some sample inputs. So the first one should yield 07 05 45. We just get rid of PM and then add 12. So what do we get as our final result? We get 190545, where this is hours, minutes, and seconds. And this is what we get over here. If you guys find this helpful, make sure you guys like and subscribe. Thanks. Now let's go for our solution, and if you notice, I have my pseudocode here, so read it and then try it on your own if you can't. If you can't, come back to the video because we will go over this solution now. So step 1 is to create a function that takes the string, and I have that right here. And if you notice, I have some examples here that has 12-hour format times, and we obviously want to convert this to military times. Now next thing, or step 2, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to create a variable, and I'm going to make this named time, and this is going to represent an array of 3 things. First is going to be an hour, next minutes, and last one is seconds with AM or PM. So I want to separate all these 3. And how can we do that? Well, we can do that with using the split method. So split, and where do we want to split? We want to split where the colon is. So if I were to just console log this, you can see that I have arrays with 3 elements. First one being the hour, second minutes, and lastly seconds with AM or PM. Okay, I have that, and let's just keep this. And now is my if statement. Well, we are going to have 2 edge cases, and first one being we have to be able to 12 midnight. And if you remember, we are supposed to change 12 AM to 000008, and we just get rid of that AM. So this 12 would become 00. So we need to handle that, and that's going to be our first if statement. So if my hour, which is represented by time at index 0, is equal to 12, and if it's AM, so if you remember, it's the second element that has AM or PM. So that's going to be represented by time at index 2. And if this includes AM, what do you want to do? Well, we want to convert or change time or the hour to 0, 0. So that's going to be time at index 0, which represents hour. It's going to be 0, 0. So that handles our case. And as you can see that this third one, which is this one, it became 0, 0 now. And the next one is also 0, 0. Now let's handle our next edge case. And this is when it's 12 at noon, so 12 p.m. Well, you might ask, why can't we just add 12 to make our military time work? Well, if you add 12 to noon, which is 12, that's going to yield 24. And you can't have something like 24, 45, 54. That's just impossible. Highest it can go is 24. So what we do is we want to keep the original string and just get rid of that PM sign. Because when it's 12 p.m., we know that we don't have to add 12 to our hour. If it was the case that it was 7 p.m., we obviously have to add 12 to it and then drop the PM sign. But when it's 12 p.m. at noon, we don't have to do that. So let's make another if statement. And this time, if time at index 0, which represents our hour, is equal to 12. And again, if time at index 2, which represents our seconds, along with the time AM or PM, and we're going to check if it includes this time PM, what are we going to do? Well, we know that we can just return that string and just get rid of that PM sign. So what can we do? We can actually use slice. So return time.slice, and we want the first 8 characters, just these. So that's going to be 0, 8. And actually, it's not time, it should be string. And as you can see, we have 12:45 and 54 seconds. So this one looks good. And finally, it's our last if case. So if it's PM, we want to add 12 to it. So time at index 2, if this includes PM, we want to add 12 to hours. So time at index 0, this is going to equal to, and we know that this is a string right now. So we need to convert it to a number to add 12. So we are going to convert it to a number, time at index 0, and add 12. And as you can see, for our first one, you can see that 7, we added 12 to it, it became 19. Okay, now that looks good. And now we need to get rid of this AM and PM sign for all our third element, which includes seconds, along with AM or PM. So how do we do that? What we can do is we can pretty much use the same method that we use here. We are going to use slice, but this time we are going to use it on the third element. So that's going to be time at index 2 is going to be equal to time at index 2 dot slice, and we want to keep the first 2, so it's going to be 0 and 2. And as you can see, it got rid of our signs. All right, that looks good. And finally, we need to return our result. So return, if you noticed, our items are all separate, right? So how can we handle this situation? Well, what we can do is we can combine everything, and when we combine everything, we want to put the colon signs back. So what can we do? What can we do to combine our elements? Well, what we can do is return time dot, and there's a method for that, join, and we give the colon sign. And as you can see, we have our final result. So if you're not sure with what join did, what join does is, let's just console log our items again. It joins all the elements in our array, and it just puts this sign, the colon, in between. And that's exactly what we got. And if you were to just put, I don't know, something like X, it would put X between all those elements. But obviously we want a colon sign, so we leave it at that, and we get our final result, and everything looks good. We got what we want. We were able to handle our edge case, this one and this one. And also our PM, it did not change to 24. So that looks good. But everything else looks good. 7 a.m., we just chopped off the AM sign. This one, we were able to get rid of the PM sign and added 12 to our hour. So everything looks good. And this is it. This is it for time conversion.